Hello again. There was a time, and not all that long ago, when there were MPs and even government ministers who had lived ordinary lives and worked for a living at mundane jobs like the rest of us. I'm thinking of people like Alan Johnson, former Home Secretary, Health Secretary, and Secretary of State for Education. A man who lived on a council estate, left school at 15 and worked as a postman. There used to be people in Parliament who had been miners, factory workers, and so on. Most of these were Labour MPs, but there were some in the Tory party as well. Those days are long past. There is now a vast gulf separating ordinary working people from MPs and ministers or shadow ministers. Just to remind viewers of one or two examples of how this separation between us and them manifests itself, as far as the Labour Party is concerned. Does anybody remember the 2010 election, when a woman in the north of England collared the then Prime Minister Gordon Brown on a walkabout and asked him why her town was filling up with Eastern Europeans? A question which many of us might have posed if we happened to find a Prime Minister nearby. Forgetting he still had on a microphone, he fled to his car and then dismissed her on air as just a bigoted woman. Yes, that just about summed up how a Labour Prime Minister viewed an ordinary member of the white working class, asking too many questions. Then, 4 years later, Emily Thornberry, whose father was Assistant Secretary General at the United Nations and who was married to a knighted High Court judge, and of course a prominent member of the Labour Party, was in the Kent town of Rochester and saw a house with a white van outside and flags bearing the cross of St George hanging out of the windows. The kind of thing which I see in my street regularly when England is competing in some football match. She thought it so funny that she took a picture and tweeted it. Those quaint working class folk, just look at how they live. This tweet may be seen in the thumbnail to this video. This woman is now the Shadow Attorney General under Keir Starmer, and this just shows what she thinks of ordinary people. The fact is that both the Labour Party as a whole, and of course the Conservatives, feel a contempt for white working class people. They don't get them. They don't understand what these people want. They don't know why they're always moaning about immigration or the lack of council houses or the state of the NHS. The reason that the political class in this country don't get it is really simple. For them, immigration means cheap cleaners and car washes. It means plumbers who are cheaper than they used to be. It means getting an extension built on your house at a good price. Au pairs, nannies and so on. Immigration is great for them. They don't live in the same area, of course, as the people whose services they employ, so that doesn't matter to them. Nor does the awful shortage of social housing, which is being driven entirely by immigration, worry them. Let's face it, how many MPs do you think live in council houses? And all the fuss about the NHS, that's just an abstract and theoretical question for politicians, because every single one of the MPs in this country earns at least $81,000 a year, with another $10,000 in expenses. And they've all got private medical insurance with Bupa. The problems that the rest of us face mean nothing at all to MPs, whatever party they belong to. Maybe if I lived in the London borough of Richmond, say, rather than in a former council house in Essex, as I do, I might feel the same way. It must be nice to be insulated from all the things which affect the rest of us and sometimes make our lives a misery. I know people who have lived quietly for years in flats on a council estate where everybody is white working class British and knows the rules of everyday life that make living on an estate bearable or even enjoyable. Then a bunch of Romanians move in, or Nigerians, and slowly the white residents are replaced by more and more foreigners until you reach a point where you seldom hear English spoken. The unwritten rules about not throwing rubbish out the windows or dropping cigarettes in the communal areas, such as landings or stairwells, are ignored, and pretty soon the place is hell to live in. I'm guessing that many viewers will know about this, either first hand or from relatives or friends. The fact is, though, that MPs don't know about it, and that's why they don't see why we're always moaning about immigration. They dismiss us, as Gordon Brown did, as just another bigoted woman, or man, as the case may be.